Hello, and welcome to episode 2. For those who's just joining, my name is Tyler Smith. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the creator of Thought to Thread. So I hand dye all of these beautiful yarns behind me, and I am a very avid knitter. Okay, so wow, episode 1 went really, really well. I was kind of blown away. I was not expecting that much to come out of it. Like, there's so many positive comments. I've met so many new people. A lot of yarn went out last week, which was like really, really sweet and made me super, super happy. So thank you. And I'm so glad you loved episode 1 so much. Couple things that I did learn from episode 1. Have notes. What do I want to talk about? What am I doing? Why am I talking about these things? So first things first, what am I wearing? Okay, I am wearing my cobblestone pullover. It is by Jared Flood, who owns Brooklyn Tweed. Any man you have in your life, it doesn't have to be a man, any human you have in your life, this is such a staple sweater. I love it so much. I've kind of have a really big Friday. I have to do a lot for work, a lot of intentional conversations. So I wanted something that felt a little bit cozy, but still kind of had that nice look. So that is what I am wearing. Okay, let's talk about Thanksgiving, because that just passed. I went to Louisiana. I had a really good time spending my time reconnecting with some family. I have not had the best relationship with a lot of family members in my past. So it was really good to see some of these family members for the first time in, I think, over 8 years since I last saw them. Oh my gosh, I just looked outside and it is snowing so much here in Seattle. Not a fan of snow. I lived in San Diego for a hot minute because I wanted the beach. Wasn't the right time, wasn't the right place, but oh, I am not ready for winter. But that's okay. That is okay. Okay, the other thing I was working on last time we chatted was my Cascades cowl. This is from Pacific Knit Co. or Jamie Lomax. I just am obsessed with this color work chart. Like, it is so freaking beautiful, and I'm so excited to wear it. So right now it is knit in a tube. I have a provisional cast on the bottom, and then all I'm now doing is just knitting and stockinette until it's long enough that I can seam it together, and then it's going to be a very, very thick, very warm cowl that you can pretty much wear all the time, and it's just going to be so cozy. It basically has 4 layers because you have the outside, the inside, and then the other outside and the other inside. So it's like you're wearing 4 scarves all in one, and I cannot wait to wear it. I didn't take this project with me to Louisiana because I felt like it was getting a little bulky, and then also it was just stockinette, and I wanted something like, this was the first time I was seeing a lot of these family members. I didn't know what it was going to be like, so I wanted to have a project that could be really time consuming or really intricate, so I can kind of like zone out and be in my own space if I needed that, which I did use a couple times. So that was a great tactic to like just have something like, I need to focus on this, like I need to disconnect, and I need to be in my head, and I need to kind of process all of the things that are going on in my world. So this is my Persistence DK yarn. It's 100% superwash. It's really spongy, and it has a ton of little fibers in it that you can't see, but when you kind of untwist it, you can see how many strands there are, which gives it a really nice round circular effect. And I really like it because it has super clean stitch definition. So let me get y'all up in there close. And you can just kind of see how clean the stitches look. This is a colorway that I'm calling the Night Court. I think we talked about this last time, inspired by A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is a Sarah J. Maas book series, which if you're into fantasy, you've probably already heard of it, but if not, highly recommend it. So that leads me to, what was I knitting over Thanksgiving break? I decided to cast on the Once in Floral by Maxim. I have wanted to knit this sweater for so long, but I kept telling myself no. I just was like, I'm not doing it. I've had a lot of challenges with my weight kind of fluctuating. Like there'd be weeks where I would just like drop 10 pounds, and then there'd be weeks where I would like gain 15, and my body just was kind of going all over the place. It's something I've always struggled with a lot, especially as a kid. And I just went through a really big life change, so it's okay. I'm happy, I'm feeling very healthy. I feel like I'm getting my exercise, I'm drinking lots of water. So you know what, I was like, this is my time. I'm not gonna let this idea of what my body should be or what I want it to be impact something that I've always really, really wanted and I wanna knit for myself. So if anyone hasn't seen this sweater, it is a beautiful yoke sweater knit top down, and it's inspired by the Schitt's Creek show and David Rose, so the roses. The yoke just has this really nice rose flower detail in it. And I basically have wanted to knit this sweater for so long that I custom created this red color that I call it dried amaranthus. It really does kind of look like dried out rose petals, but I couldn't call it like dried rose or dusty rose because that's a whole other thing. But I found a flower that was very similar to it that kind of had that ashy undertone, that kind of that powdery look. So I landed on dried amaranthus, and this color has been sitting on my shelf for so long. I have a bunch of it that you probably can't see up top, but this is how bad I've wanted to knit this sweater. So what other colors? Because there's petals, there's a background contrast color, there's a primary color. So I thought it would be kind of fun. I'm gonna kind of pause this video for a second, and I'm gonna add in a video of me thinking about my different colors, how I chose them, how I pieced them together, and that thought process, because I thought that was actually really fascinating color theory, because you don't want something that's going to be too high contrast and then it's just going to stand out really boldly, but you also don't want something that's so low contrast that it's just going to kind of blend together. So how did I balance finding the right colors? So I'll kind of pause, come back, and then I'll show you how far I've gotten on the yoke. Okay, loved ones, welcome to my options. So I just showed you the photo of what the pattern is going to look like. So I'm going to be doing the red rose with some green vines. It'll be the black accents. And what I'm trying to figure out is, what do I do for that kind of neutral background that's going to be framing the rose? So I have my Seattle gray color here, which does kind of flow really well with this ashy kind of red and the Monstera green. It does flow pretty well, but I'm worried that it's gonna get a little too silvery and then there's gonna be a lot going on. So my second option is my ash gray. And I'm leaning towards this color because I think it's gonna be a lot more soft, a little bit of warmth kind of in the gray here versus this, which kind of almost has a similar metallic-y texture. So I'm leaning towards this one, but we also have mystery option number 3, which I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna go with, but I do have my novel pages, and I think that's just a little too creamy for my liking. A little fuzz. Yeah, I think that's just, I think I would notice it. It would stand out. It almost, compared to these colors, becomes a little ivory. So I think I am going to go with ash gray. So New York black for the body, ash gray for the framing, and then red rose and green petals. The pattern would pretty much swap out the black like this, but no, if I'm doing like a rose, I want it to be a rose. And I know I'll probably like I'm not gonna waste the yarn, but I'm only gonna use a very little bit of the green, and I'll probably have enough to maybe do like a sock or even a hat, because my skeins are actually really, really large. Like this has 438 yards. That's a pretty good amount of yardage per skein. So I think this is my color palette. Thank you for hearing my thought process on why I try to figure out colors. Okay, so now you have seen the thought process, I'm going to show you the yoke. So I have this on just some yarn holders because I wanted to finish my cascade cowl first before I knit any further. But this is my yoke sweater. I'm like having to uncurl it because I mean, that's a lot of color work for basically like 5 days. It was kind of an intense knitting, but it was really good for me to escape. So you kind of have this black is the primary color, and so you cast it on, you knit down, and then you actually go back up and pick up stitches to knit the collar. I think if I were to do this again, I maybe would have done like a few rows of just straight stockinette, and then maybe do like a purl ridge or something just as like a line break to give me an indicator of where I'm actually starting. But I felt like it was really hard because you basically knit like 2 rows and you're increasing those 2 rows, and then all of a sudden you're starting the color work chart. So I did notice that like I had the hardest part with my tension at the very tippy top. And I think I would have liked just to have a little bit more wiggle room, and then you could have like snipped that, or you could have cut that out, or you could have folded it under however you wanted to, but I think I just wanted slightly more room. Also, this was my first time doing stranded color work with 3 yarns at a time. Because you can especially see here in this like little green section, I have the New York black, the ash gray, Monstera green, and those are all kind of working even. And there's times where like your green float is stranding a lot of stitches. So learned a lot about tension. I just took my time, and I'm so excited to block this because I look at it and I'm like, oh, my tension's a little rough. But then as I kind of like pull it and give it a little stretch, like it really evens out. It lays nice and flat. So I'm so excited for this sweater. I cannot wait to wear it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the yarn that I chose. So this is my sock yarn, starting with Monstera green. This one was like I created this color in the middle of the summer. I had a really nice Monstera plant, and I loved the way that I could look at the Monstera plant, and those things, if you know how to take care of them, are really, really hardy. I personally think they're really hard to kill, but I have a really green thumb, so I don't want to assume too much. But sometimes leaves get a little yellow in them. Sometimes they get a little brown, and you can't really see it super, super well, but when you're in really nice lighting, you get this really nice green that's very similar to the Monstera, but then you also have like that natural element. So it's very earthy and it feels very raw to me, which is something I always want my colors to do. I personally love kind of more of a natural palette. And then you'll also notice that almost all of my colors have this kind of dusty, chalky, ashy feel to them. Like it is a technique that I kind of self-discovered, and I was like, ooh, that looks really, really cool. And now I incorporate it into almost every single one of my colors that I do, just because I feel like it adds this little bit of like modern warmth to it. Sometimes modern can feel really cold or really sterile, and just kind of having that like ashy, dusty, chalky feel to it, I just felt it gave it a little bit of life that my colors were needing. So Monstera green in my sock yarn. My sock yarn is a blend of superwash merino wool, nylon, and mohair. Next I have, this is the color that I really debated when I was kind of figuring out what did I want to be like the background for that rose. And so this is my ash gray. So this was kind of built off novel pages, which is supposed to look like the book pages, but I wanted something that had a little bit more warmth to it, felt a little bit more sandy, and just kind of had a little bit more heart to it. Novel pages is a really great neutral, but it's a little brighter, and I wanted something that was a little bit moodier, but still felt very me. And so I created this color called Ash Gray. Again, you'll notice like a lot of that dusty, ashy, chalky undertone to it, but it kind of has that sandy warmth to it. It's a really nice, even neutral that goes with a lot of other colors. One thing that I've discovered as I've been knitting with this, so natural or hand dyeing yarn, not natural dyeing, I use acid dyes. Sometimes colors break, and that's just part of the process. Like it's a dye powder that you mix in water, and then you cook your yarn in water and this dye. And temperature can have an effect on that. If you heat it too fast, heat it too slow, the amount of acid that you put in there. There's so many factors. And every once in a while, I've noticed there's just been this like teeny tiny little like blue speck in this yarn, which I actually think is really fun when you're knitting. You're like, oh, I see it. And then when you knit it, you can't really, I looked to try to show one of my friends because we were talking about it. And I can't find it, but it was just a really cool thing to see like the hand dyed aspect of like those subtle imperfections and how we just embrace that, and it's part of the yarn. Okay, New York Black. This is probably one of my most popular yarns. I lived in upstate New York for a little bit, and I was always really inspired by the hustle and bustle of the city, and I just love something that felt really saturated, really intense, and really bold. And so that was sort of the inspiration behind New York Black. And I just felt like I wanted something that could like complement all of my other colors. So when you see this up close and personal, some people see a little bit of like eggplanty, maroony purple. And then other people just see like the total black. Some people see some blues in it. So it's a really fun color because it is black. And when you see it up against other colors, you're like, wow, it's a very dark color. But when you knit it flat and stockinette, you kind of get these little blimps, and it kind of, your personal interpretation of the color comes out, which is really fun. And I really like to hear people talk about it because someone always finds something different or unique about it, but everyone agrees that it's black. Okay, and then the last one is the dried amaranthus that I basically designed so I could knit this sweater, and it just became part of my core line because I think it's such a beautiful red, and it does really have that kind of dusty, chalky, warm feel to it. I just think it's so beautiful. So yes, this is the colors that I chose. Okay, so that is what I am working on. This weekend, I'm going to be at Acorn Street in Seattle hosting a pop-up. So if you're in Seattle, come say hi. If not, that's totally okay. So last week, we also talked about the next book colorway is going to be based off of Notes on an Execution. I have the yarn soaking, so I'm hoping to maybe dye this weekend for that. So next video, you'll definitely have a preview. Last thing I just wanted to talk about is while I was in Louisiana, I discovered that my grandma on my dad's side was an avid knitter, or not an avid knitter, but that she knit. And I never knew this. So I've always had such a really close, powerful relationship, with both of my grandmas. On my mom's side, she was a crafter and a reader. And I actually just inherited all of her books. Unfortunately, she did pass away, and I inherited all of her books. So there's gonna be a lot of books coming. I have all the boxes sitting over to the side that I probably will do like a separate video just related to the books and what I'm excited to read, kind of the emotions that I'm feeling, because I just think that's gonna be a really healing process for me to talk about, just like verbally. I like to just speak out into the void, and that helps me process and helps me think. So maybe doing a video will be really good for me in that manner. But the grandma on my dad's side, she was very much so a like game player. We love to play card games, different games, watch Disney movies, and I remember spending summers like playing endless card games with her. So when I found out she was a knitter over this break, I was kind of like a little bit in shock that we kind of had this common element that I didn't know. So I didn't take her knitting needles because they were older and they were a little bit longer. So my aunt is gonna ship those to me, but I just didn't want to run the risk of them getting taken going through TSA. But I did sneak in this little Altoids can of her notions. And I just thought it would be really sweet to like show these. I don't think I'll ever use those because they're quite old and they're quite fragile, but it's just like a little memorabilia. So she has these really cute kind of like stitch stoppers that go on the top of your needles. She has some that are pink. She has some that are green. They are very firm and they're pretty small, so definitely for teeny tiny needles. She has this really cutely wound measuring tape that is just like, it's so perfect. I don't know how she got it this perfect, and then has a little twist tie on it. And then she also had these really fun stitch markers that are kind of like triple circles. So in some way they could almost be like progress keepers as well as stitch markers if you open them up a little bit. I haven't because I'm still a little emotional about it, but I think the context that I didn't say is my grandma on my dad's side had also passed away not that long ago, so it was still a very raw emotion, but it was just something that I felt like, wow, we have this shared connection that I didn't even realize. The last thing, I don't know if it's right here, it is right here, is she has this by Lily's Design book number 206. At the time, and it's printed on here, this was 35 cents. And it has my grandma's handwriting on the front. I'm like, should I open this? Because I don't want it to be like a copyright thing, but it just, I think it's such a cool book that she has that I'm gonna cherish forever, that teaches you how to knit and crochet. And it has like really fun tutorials and descriptions and all these things that like, I'm just like, wow, this is what my grandma did, she had this like little knitting life that I didn't even know about. So this is episode 2. I think I've had a really fun time like building up this YouTube community, and I'm so excited to see where it grows. For those who have made it through the full video, I have one request. I'm trying to figure out what I want to call this type of podcast, because this type of format is going to be very knitting focused, and there'll be some like books and coffee and other things incorporated in there, but I am a really big book lover, and that's something I kind of wanted to incorporate into this YouTube channel of like a book focus. And I know that not all knitters are also readers, and I know not all readers are knitters, so I want to figure out a way to kind of have those times and places. So for this podcast, I've thought about calling it the Thoughts Podcast because it's thought to thread. I thought maybe I'd do a play on the name and do Thoughts and Threads Podcast. Or maybe I just call it Thought to Threads Podcast. So if you have any fun ideas of like what I should kind of call these series, like I think Andrea Mowry does like the I'll Knit If I Want To. We have like the Needles at the Ready guys that just kind of do the numbering, or like the new podcast. Like I want to have like something to call this type of format. So yeah, happy Friday if you're watching. It's a Friday for me here in Seattle, and thank you so much for following along. Bye.